Welcome to Threads of Sustainability. I'm your host, Bridget O'Flaherty. With climate change and environmental impacts becoming a common narrative in our daily lives, it seems like a great time to explore what sustainability looks like in the quilting, fiber, and textile world. We'll hear from creatives, makers, manufacturers, and producers from all over the world to discover what sustainability looks like to them and find out how they're contributing to a sustainable future. We will celebrate positive steps people are taking, no matter how small. Whether you're a hobbyist or a pro, you can bring sustainability into your practice. Join me as we take a deep dive into the environmental, social, and economic impacts with Threads of Sustainability. Thanks for stopping in again. I'm really excited to bring you this week's guest. We are going to be talking about some sensitive topics, and I wanted to make sure that there was a warning ahead of the actual interview so you can choose to listen to it or not. We're going to be talking about residential schools. We are going to be talking about some of the stories behind that, and some of the conversations may be triggering for some people. I hope that you actually are able to listen to it. There's some really wonderful things that are happening, and I am excited to share this story with you. Welcome to Threads of Sustainability. I'm really excited to talk to you, Vanessa. It's amazing what you're doing with Quilts for Survivors. And it's a story that I think is really, really important that needs to be told. And there's a lot of history and backstory that I think is also really important to talk about. I guess the first question that I want to ask you is, what inspired you to start making quilts for survivors?
I've been quilting since I was 9 years old. So quilting isn't something that's new to me. And my First Nation, I'm from the Savvy Cree, and we've always honored people, either from our community or outside our community, with blankets or handmade quilts. So that wasn't new to me either. But when I heard of the stories coming out of Kamloops about the 215 unmarked graves, these were just children, and I'm a mother and I have 5 kids. I can't imagine sending my kid off to school and then them never returning. I just knew I had to do something. And I heard of people doing walks and runs and canoeing and raising money. And I knew I couldn't do something like that. I couldn't commit that much time away from home. So I decided to reach out to the quilting community. First, of course, my family and friends at Quilt, and then out on Facebook and just asking them if they can help me make some blocks in order to make 18 quilts. I wanted 215 blocks plus one to make 18 quilts, and I was going to send them to First Nations around Canada, in every province, every territory. And that was my goal. I thought that was pretty ambitious.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, this
18 quilts is ambitious. Absolutely. For one person.
And I thought that, the chief of council in those First Nations could present it to a survivor or hang it in their band office in recognition of all the survivors, or however they saw fit. And it just took off from there. I think I've only sent maybe 3 to actual First Nations, like right to their band office to say,
okay,
it's just a survivor. Because once people heard about it, all the survivors wanted a quilt. They were like, this is a really, really neat idea. I'd like a quilt. And then the requests came in and it just snowballed.
How did you start getting that word out? How did people start hearing about it?
I just used Facebook. I'm a little old school, so
that's okay.
There's all these things, and my kids are like, oh, you should use this and that. Facebook's kind of old. I'm like, that's okay. I'm kind of old. So I just reached out to people there. And then, because I was on, there's lots of Facebook quilting groups.
Yeah.
And I just reached out on there, said, remove my post if not allowed, but this is what I'm doing, and do you want to help? And I simply was asking for one block from every quilter.
Right.
And it soon turned into people were making multiple blocks. People were sending quilt tops and piles of blocks and quilts, and it's just amazing what people have done. But my great-grandparents were residential school survivors.
Okay.
And I never got to meet them. Thought it would be important to remember them and to honor their memory and the impact that they had on my mother. My grandfather and his siblings were hidden in the bush so that they wouldn't have to go to residential school.
And so they didn't go to school, or they hid and were still sent to school?
They didn't have to go to residential school. They were hidden. Okay. And because of that, my great-grandfather lost all his identity. So he had no social insurance number. He had no...
Okay. So it was part of that. When you leave the reservation, you lose your identity as an Indian.
Yeah, so he had no status card and stuff like that. Yeah. So it was hard for him to make a living, but he didn't want his kids to go.
Yeah.
We don't know the whole story because they never shared it with us, but that's what I know.
Yeah. So that's back, that's going back a couple of generations for you.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you a little bit more about that generational impact, because you're starting to hear a lot of the stories from survivors themselves. And I know that those stories aren't your stories, but there are moments that you're getting to share with them. And I'm wondering if you could share some of those.
Well, there's lots. There's lots. There's a lot that is just, you don't want to share. It's terrible. It's not good news. There's a lot of abuse, physical and sexual abuse. They weren't even given names. They weren't even allowed to give their name. They were a number. So you wouldn't be allowed to introduce me as Vanessa, because I would have been some number, some random number. There was lots of disease in those schools. There was lots of children who got injured, who, their fingers were broken. There was one guy showed me his hands. They were broken at school.
Right.
By the nuns and the priests and the teachers that were there. There's lots of pain. A lot of the survivors, maybe their children didn't attend school, but they didn't know how to parent them. So they didn't raise them in a good way, because they didn't know how. They weren't raised by their parents. They were raised in a very traumatic environment, a very abusive environment. So they pass it on to their kids without really wanting to. They just didn't know any other way.
There's no resources for that entire generation of people who are coming back to reservations. There's no resources for them to know differently, right? No.
And there's a lot of shame. One lady said that she didn't even know her mom was a survivor, because her mom never talked about it. Like there's a lot of shame and guilt that our survivors carried with them that they didn't need to. It wasn't their fault that they had to go there. It was really hard. And one lady had shared her story. She said when she heard she had to go, she didn't want to be an Indian anymore. She says, why did the Creator make me Indian? I don't want to be an Indian. I don't want to go to that school. Why do I have to be Indian? And it was really hard for her as a child.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. You and I both know some of the background and history of residential schools, but I sadly think that there are still a lot of people out there who don't know those stories and don't know what that history is. Could you give us a brief synopsis? I know that it's hard to wrap up in like quick sentences, and I would never expect it to be fully explained in a short bit, but could you maybe give us some insights into what that meant, the residential schools?
Sure. So a residential school was created to keep the child and kill the Indian. So they wanted us as people, but they didn't want us as Indian people. And if the long and short of it is, they wanted our land, all the land is owned by First Nations people.
Right.
And there's lots of minerals in Canada. We're a very rich country. That's a big part of what governments want. But residential schools were created to take the Indian out of us, because they thought we were savages and we didn't know how to do things.
And that kind of language was written into policy.
It
right?
was. It actually in the legislation was
in the Indian Act. Yeah.
Yeah. These schools were placed strategically so that the family couldn't get to them from their reserve. So wherever they lived, they placed these schools strategically so that they were hundreds of kilometers away, so that the children couldn't run away and the parents couldn't come and see them.
Right.
So a lot of these kids were in school for 12 months of the year, and they never saw their family. Some of them never went back home ever.
And what age would they start taking kids to these residential schools?
In the stories that I've read, it's all different ages. So sometimes they were as young as 3. And this one lady said a lot of people didn't believe her that she left at the age of 3, but she was only 3 years old when they came and took her away.
Wow.
And they literally took them. It wasn't like you signed them up for this school and you sent them, it's not like a camp.
Not like boarding school.
No, it's not like boarding school or anything. They literally came into the community and took the children.
Wow.
They just took them.
It just makes me nauseous to think that humans can do that to other humans.
Yeah. So then they went to these schools and they were taught. One lady did share that, the nuns taught her how to sew.
Right.
So she learned how to sew at school, and they learned different things. They did attend.
There was some skill learning happening.
Sure. And there's lots of kids who learned how to play hockey or other sports. Like there's lots of good things coming out of it, or education parts coming out of it. But it's so tainted because there was so much neglect.
Right.
Kids were starved, or they just weren't. They didn't have the same things that other kids at the same era. And the survival rate of coming out of residential school alive was you wouldn't make it out. Your risk of death was higher than World War II.
Wow.
And thousands of kids went over 110 years, I think they were open.
Yeah, I was going to say they existed right into the 90s, right?
Yeah, 96, it was the last one closed in Saskatchewan. My first husband, my kid's father, my oldest kid's father, he attended residential school, and he's not that much older than I am.
It's appalling.
It is. And that this was allowed to happen. And it was a form of government, like the government said, no, we need to do this. And then nobody stopped them. We stopped them. And they were talking, I know one lady talked about how some of the girls would become pregnant and they couldn't keep their kids. You can picture what they would do with the kids. But
those are really, I imagine, very hard stories for Indigenous people to tell.
For anyone who's suffered any kind of abuse, it's hard to talk about it. We don't really want to talk about it. I'm a survivor of domestic abuse and abuse as a child. It's not something you want to talk about. Hey, guess what? I was abused as a child.
It's not a badge you're wearing on your shoulder. No.
No, it's not something that there's no pride there for sure. Really ask yourself, why me? Why would that person pick me? What's wrong with me? What could I have done differently? Those type of thoughts. Those are the thoughts that have gone through my head.
The residential schools closed, just talking along the history of things. And the Truth and Reconciliation was in 2003. Was that when that began?
I believe so.
99 recommendations out of the Truth and Reconciliation, correct?
Yes.
There's still very few of those actually been actioned, as far as I understand it. Do you see this as part of that healing process that's starting to come out so that the stories can be told, and maybe acting as a bridge and a link towards acknowledgement for that?
I never thought of it as that way until one guy who said he's done lots of history on what's being done for survivors of residential school. Because, as you had said, it came out in 2003. Well, that was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
That wasn't like recently. Like, this isn't a recent movement. And even Every Child Matters, that came out in 2001. That's over 20 years ago. The government, they're very poor at getting information out there. Information that we need. And these movements, these are important. This is our history, and we can only plead ignorance for so long.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what a lot of people had said, was they heard the stories coming out of Kamloops and out of BC and other places that there were these unmarked graves. And that's just a small part of the history of the schools. And these are non-Indigenous people. And they're like, we heard it. We didn't know what to do. We could give money, but what does that benefit anybody?
Yeah.
Like, what is it really doing? And I had talked to this reporter out of Alberta, and he said that in his 12 years of research, this is the only project that is directly for survival. And we're a tangible way to give back. We're not just, here's a book, read it, here's a movie, watch it. We hope it does something.
No, it's a personal connection. It's a really personal link.
Yes. The survivors really like the quilts. They said that because in our tradition, at least as a Cree woman, we wrap them in the quilt so that they can feel that love and that honor and that respect that we have for them and their journey. And they said that they can feel that love that comes, from coast to coast. And the people who are making the quilts, I never thought of the impact it would have on them when I first started. I just thought, well, let's get these quilts out there. These people have to be going through a lot of pain, knowing that these were their classmates, these were their, sisters and brothers and cousins. But having people say, this has helped me, this has brought me closer. I understand the cultures that are around me now, the nations that are in my territory, and they're educating themselves. They're going above and beyond what the group is for. A lot of people are saying it's going to have a really big impact on the country. And I'm just enjoying the process.
The whole idea around sustainability is that we're using our resources that we have now, but it's for future generations.
Oh, for sure.
And there's such a link to that with Indigenous culture that through 7 generations, correct?
Yes.
Where looking into the past and into the future. And I think that what you're doing is healing some of the past and helping the future to understand and carry that past with them still. Mm-hmm. It's not disappearing. This isn't going to disappear.
No. But
it's acknowledging that past.
And understanding how that has affected the way that I am today. I am this way because of what happened to my great-grandparents, what happened to my grandfather, and how my mother was raised. And all of that is part of who I am. And going forward, I want a better life for my kids, for my grandkids, and the other generations that come. And I think it's really important to use what you have. There's lots of things that I can't do, but I can quilt. So I think that I have a responsibility to use my gift to better the country. if I can. It's a really simple concept, but it's helping. And it was done in the right way.
I think so too. It was a lot of respect and a lot of honor for those communities. I am on the Algonquin territories here and the Anishinaabe communities, and the Algonquin territory is huge. And that's where I'm talking to you from. And you're further north than me, right?
Yes, I'm in Timmins and I'm in the Matagami territory. They're First Nation, they're Ojibwe, and we're in Treaty 9. But Treaty 9 is huge. It's huge.
I did wanted to make acknowledgement for the unceded territory that I'm talking to you from and understanding the implications behind all of that. We've talked a little bit about how it's impacting the people that are giving and making the quilts and how it's healing for them, but how are those stories happening? What kind of stories are you hearing from the people that are receiving the quilts? I imagine they're difficult, some of them.
A lot of the people who gift the quilts like to see, like there's pictures on our Facebook page of people wrapped in quilts. Well, we sent out almost 1,600 quilts. There aren't pictures of 1,600 people wrapped in quilts.
Wow.
Because not everyone wants their picture taken. Not everyone wants their picture on social media. And we respect that. There was a couple comments of people who had made a comment about how they'd love to see their quilt wrapped around someone. And this young lady, she had requested a quilt for her dad and her uncle. And she says, I know that you want to see your quilt, but you have to understand that there's an impact beyond just seeing them wrapped in their quilt. And she said her uncle was pleased, was overjoyed that she had requested a quilt for him. He just took that quilt and wrapped himself in it, and he was so happy. He had tears of joy. He was just overwhelmed with the love from this quilt. Where her father was angry at her and couldn't believe that she did that and got strangers to send him a quilt because he's in a different place on his journey.
Sure.
And he wasn't, so he perceived it as something in a negative way. Had another lady who I believe she was in the Ottawa area, and I gave her an address, and she went up. She had contacted them and said, I'd like to personally bring this quilt. And it was, I believe, the lady's son or grandson. He said, she's not ready. She's not ready to get her quilt. We'll take it, but she doesn't want to see it yet. She's not ready. So as far as I know, she still hasn't opened her quilt, and that was quite a few months ago.
It must be a really big process to accept that.
I think so. As one survivor, because we had done a large presentation here in Timmins, and there was local survivors at this, and we had quilts for all of them, and we were giving them quilts. We were taking time to honor them. And after we were done, one of the spoke on behalf of the group and said to be honored for something we've been ashamed of our whole life is very hard to take, because it's very overwhelming for us.
I bet.
It's really hard. And there were survivors there that didn't tell us they were survivors, and they didn't come up and get a quilt. Right. So we later brought them a quilt, but they didn't want to be acknowledged in front of everyone.
Right. They weren't ready.
There's a lot of shame and there's a lot of pain. A lot of pain.
When you are putting these quilts together, you said that you've done over 1,600 of these. Almost
1,600. We're at almost.
Which is spectacular.
Way beyond my goal.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess what's spectacular to me is that there's 1,600 survivors that are.
And there's 900 people waiting.
And probably thousands more that will come. That to me is shocking, and also wonderful that such a small idea has gained this ripple and is moving into this big wave. And it's really that, again, tying back to sustainability. That's the epitome of sustainability right there, is impacting within yourself, within your community, and having it reverberate beyond. That's what it's all about.
Oh yeah, it's just gone out, and then you send out that one quilt to Sally, and then Sally's 5 friends find out, and then now you've got 5 more requests, and then they get the quilts, and then you've got 5, then you've got 25 more requests, where we've talked to the leaders of the First Nation, and they say, here's all our survivors, we'll take all the quilts. They in turn send a monetary donation or something to help with the process of making the quilts. And then I have groups in BC and in Nova Scotia that are making quilts for survivors right there. I've had groups, lots of guilds are just saying, hey, we'll take on how many do you need for this area? We'll make all of them.
When you are putting these quilts together and sending them out to survivors as individuals, what does that look like? How do they get, you package them in any specific way? What are you doing with the actual delivery?
We use Canada Post because it's the cheapest and it crosses everywhere. And we put them in a box. They get a letter. They get a poem that was written by a local Timmins lady. and they get a card, a personal card. So a lot of the people on our group don't sew. So they make cards. So these are like hand-drawn, or they're like little cards.
Okay, so you're showing me those cards there, and they've got like quilt patterns on them?
Well, this one does. This one has a quilt pattern. Some of them are just flowers or like a thinking of you.
Okay.
Or there's some of them where people's pictures that they took, like photographs, and they made them into cards. Like they're really,
and you
really
get
nice.
Those donated to you as well?
I do, yeah.
That's amazing.
It's just because people are like, I want to help, but I don't sew. What can I do?
Right.
And I'm like, well, we'll take handmade cards. And then other people are like, what can I do? And some people just buy fabric, or some people will pay for batting or send us a box of thread. Or
okay.
There's lots that people are doing that has nothing to do with
And the letter and the poem, can you go into that detail a little bit more?
So the poem was written by a local lady. Her name is Diana Klatt. This we send to every survivor, and I'll read it to you actually. It says, wrapped in love. Afghans, blankets, covers, or quilts. The concept is all the same. The difference is how they are made. These quilts are special, made by hands, some quite experienced, some new to the craft. Each one is unique, as were the children we wish to honor. Not meant to take away your pain, they were sewn with love and compassion, to wrap you in our warmth when you are chilled, to surround you with our strength when you feel weak, to cover you with hope when you feel alone. So please take comfort in knowing that there are many who care. We are with you all the way. So that poem goes with every quilt. Even if it's sent from, Jane out of Toronto or Ken out of BC, we send it to them through email, and they print it off, and then they include it with the quilt. Or in some cases, we have Afghans that are crocheted or knitted, and those are sent as well. And then the letter just explains why I started this group, what we are, and why they're getting this quilt. Okay. And that we send with every quilt as well. And then we always, at least from Timmins, we include a personal note, and then we put a label. We sew a label on. So it's a feather? It's an eagle feather in orange that says Quilts for Survivors 2021. And we never changed it from 2021. It's not, we were started in 2021, but the concept is that's when those stories of the unmarked graves came out. Okay. That's where that. And it triggered the idea of these quilts. And so you want to hold that as a significant marker? Maybe the survivor that gets the quilt today, maybe their great-grandchild will look at that label and go, well, what does that mean in 2021? What happened? And then they can go Google and see, what happened in 2021. And then if they know, they learn, this is why, this is how this happened, and this is what happened in that year. So it's not just the story about the survivors of residential schools over those centuries, but it's also about the acknowledgement of the deaths that occurred that had never been acknowledged previously. Like the residential schools had been acknowledged, but those deaths had not been, and that came to light in 2021. Yes. So that's the significant piece for you. Yeah, because I can't imagine my kid leaving home and then never finding out what happened to them. No, me neither. I can't. It just we have, with technology today, you have lots of ways to find out where your kid is, right? You can just follow them. You can have an app and follow them. But to not know what happened to my child, not know if they're out there, if they can't find me. Like lots of kids ran away from school. What happened to those kids? And lots of kids died, but were not buried. Right. So there's also what happened to those kids. And where is the knowledge of what happened to those kids? Yeah, and even just, they've been slow to release all of this information of how many kids attended and what happened to them. And there's lots of disease too in the schools, and so a lot of them died because of that. I'm wondering still how much we don't know. I don't think we'll ever know the full truth, because a lot of our survivors are older. They're in their 60s plus. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. A lot of them, their stories went with them when they passed over, and we'll never know their story. We have records, but history is written by people who were on top of history. They weren't the ones that suffered from all these decisions. They were the ones that rise during all these decisions. And so history is a little difficult. And it depends on who's telling the history, right? Like what that perspective is. Like I grew up obviously non-Native and grew up in a very white Anglo-Saxon Catholic church situation, and that this history was never taught
to me as a child. I didn't know that through elementary school. I didn't even know it through high school. It wasn't until I was in my 40s that I started to have any understanding of the Indian Act and residential schools and the impacts of the white papers and all of the other things that came with that. I didn't know.
No.
And I am ashamed that I didn't know. And I'm ashamed that I had a school experience that just wiped that off the history. I am doing my best now to try and be a better community member and accepting and understanding. Part of that is trying to learn as much as I possibly can.
Well, I think that's really what truth and reconciliation is you've acknowledged that this did happen. This is the truth. What can I do with it?
Yeah.
And if you can make even just your little part of the world a little better.
Yeah.
Impact on other people better, realizing that, you know what, there's lots of reasons why my people are the way they are.
Yeah.
And it's because of all the tragedy that's happened to
But
them.
resilience is quite also strong.
It's huge, because there's no way I would be here and be proud to say that I'm an Indigenous mother. There's no way that without their resilience, without them fighting for them to just be who they are, now we get to practice our language. We get to do our traditions. We get to share our knowledge with everyone very openly, something we could do before. In residential schools, they couldn't speak their language. They would get eaten if they tried to comfort their sister who was having a bad day. They tried to say something to them. They had to speak English. So then now these children are going home to their First Nations not being able to communicate. One girl said she went home and she couldn't speak to her grandparents.
She spoke English.
Yeah, because she wasn't allowed, because she had forgotten her language. Because my grandparents were allowed to speak their language, and then they chose just to speak English. We never got to learn from them our language and hear our stories in our language.
There's no doubt that there's a long way to go for being able to do real healing and real change for culture to return to what it should be.
Yes. But I mean, every little bit helps. And I know there's some schools that are now teaching about residential schools and the impact that it's had. And there's other groups that are trying to provide education and support. That's what we got to do. But it's taken a really long time. I don't think it
shouldn't have taken that long. No. When you're constructing the quilts, like you said, you get sometimes just fabric, sometimes you get the full quilt, sometimes you get blocks. And sometimes you just get a quilt top. So are you quilting? Are you doing this? Or do you have other people sewing for you? Are you on the management of the side of this, or what? Do you get to quilt? I guess is my question.
I do.
Okay.
So I'm actually working on a quilt right here. So I get to piece. I get to do all the different jobs. So I do get to make blocks, because we do offer classes. And then I get to quilt. We have a long arm in the studio. So we have a studio in downtown Timmins that was graciously donated to us. We don't pay anything for it. We just work out of it. I have about 20 ladies, local ladies that come. I have about 6 to 10 that come quite regularly. And they come and sew. So we have machines set up. They come and they put the blocks that are sent. They piece them together to make a quilt, usually about 12 blocks in a quilt. Then we put them in the pile, and I say piles of tops or flimsies that need to be sewn. So we have about 300 tops that need to be quilted. And we get about 10 out a week, something like that. And then the fabric that we get, we use to make the quilt behind me. It's a quilt that I'm teaching in class. And we use all of the scraps to make that. Then, of course, there's binding, and there's, sometimes the quilt comes, it's a little small, so we put a border on it. The ladies are really good at that. Mostly, I use the long arm, and then I do all the administrative work.
Right.
Of running the business.
But you do still get to quilt.
Oh, I do. Yes.
Oh, good.
I make sure. Some of the ladies are like, you need to just sit there and quilt for a bit. Okay. So I do get to do some hands-on, and then of course I still quilt at home.
Yeah.
I have quite a few quilts that I'm working on for myself.
Yeah. I kind of believe that the action of quilting and doing handwork is really kind of healing in itself. It just kind of gives you space, makes you stop, makes you slow down.
Yeah. And when you know that when you know who you're making it for, it just gives a little bit more pride, I think. I find that when I know who it's for, like when I make a quilt for my child, if I know this is for one of my kids, then I know, well, I'll do this and I'll do that to make it special for them. This quilt that I'm working on, I'm hoping to give to the First Nation in Kamloops. Now, I don't know how to pronounce their name properly, so I won't even try. But I didn't realize there was a First Nation really close to Kamloops. I'm hoping to present this quilt to them.
Okay.
And so it has lots of meaning in it.
So you must be learning a lot about the nations across the country as well.
Yeah, there's 630 First Nations, and we've been in contact with a few of them, not all of them. There's still many that I don't even know if they know about. We were able to honor all the survivors in my First Nation. So Miss Maddie Cree, all of our living survivors have received a quilt. Some of our members have said, do you have any names for this particular First Nation? And I'll say yes or no, or we don't at this time. So then they'll reach out and I'll say, hey, this is our project, this is what we're doing, would you like some quilts? And one First Nation came back with 50 names, another came back with 85, and then another came back and says, we're not ready to do that yet. Our survivors aren't quite there yet. And I thought, well, that's okay. But in a roundabout way, there's actually, that First Nation has a group of quilters, and they're making all the quilts for the people there.
Okay. And have you started seeing that ripple effect moving beyond Canadian borders?
Yes, we've sent quite a few to the States. Well, they're either, because the States also had residential schools.
Yeah.
And they didn't run as long though. So some of our quilts have gone to them. Some of them are Canadians living in the US.
Right.
We have sent some there. But we've also received donations from Australia, Norway, like as far away as Alaska, Hawaii, just people wanting to help. Australia said, Canadians sent us quilts when we were making them for our firefighters when they were, when the tree was burning. So they wanted to reciprocate and they sent us a bunch of quilt tops.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's really neat to see. There was a lady from Norway who sent a quilt.
Wow.
To one of our survivors. And I didn't even think I would get enough blocks to make the 18 quilts. And then to have people sending me stuff from all over the country and even the world, it's like, every day I'm just amazed.
You started something really big.
I did. And that was not my intention. I was just planning to make a few quilts and then go back to work because I'm a bookkeeper, that's my trade is bookkeeping. My passion is quilting for sure. And now I quilt more than I bookkeep.
It's maybe not a bad thing. I want to thank you for today. I'm very, very honored that you spoken to me about this whole project and all of the things you had to tell me today. I really, truly appreciate it.
Well, I'm very honored to be able to share it. Yeah. And that people, not only that I get to share, but that people are interested, who want to know, and they want to know how we can help. And that's just huge in and of itself.
I agree. I think it's such an important story to tell. And I think that there are a lot of people out there who will want to know about this. And I think linking stories like this to sustainability, because people think sustainability is this big environmental idea, and it is. But our environment includes our community and the people that are in it. And so it's not just a story for sustainability to just take a look at how the environment is being impacted. We have to look, first of all, at ourselves, second of all, at the people within our reach, and then in our local community. And that's the way we make global change. It has to come from that individual thing. So I think that stories like yours are such an important part of understanding what sustainability is.
I don't remember where I heard this, but they were talking about the importance of things starting out at like the ground level, because they tend to grow a little faster than if it's the top down. They don't tend to go as far. And I think it's just really neat to see how a simple idea, just send me a block.
Yeah.
Send me one block, I'll make a quilt. Me and a couple of ladies will just, whip them up and then.
Yeah, I don't expect you imagined when you thought you were making 18 quilts that it would become what it is today.
No, we had 18 quilts. We started at the end of June of last year, and we had 18 in like the middle of July. And then I was like, hey, do we pick another goal? Just to make them until you don't have anyone who wants them anymore.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
But we also honor 60 Scoop and day school survivors and anyone who went through the foster care system, because those also were very traumatic.
Can you explain a little bit? I know what 60 Scoop is, but can you explain a little bit about what that is?
From my understanding, it's in the 60s, they just went and took all these kids. They just went and took kids and put them in foster care.
Just took them away from, it wasn't necessarily residential schools. It was taking them out of the home.
They were just taken from their home and given to mostly to non-Indigenous families. Okay. And then they were raised. I'm sure some of them, had loving homes, but a lot of them, again, there was a lot of abuse or neglect, or they were just mistreated because they were Indian. And we were seen as a lesser member of society. We used to have to get lots of permission to do things. You see, there's documents where people had to request if they could leave the reserve and why they were leaving and how long they were going to be gone. And nobody does that. Nobody asks you when you're leaving Timmins, where are you going? How long are you going to be gone?
No. And that was done through an Indian agent, right? Like they had to ask the Indian agent permission to go and visit a relative in the hospital.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if they left without that, they might not be allowed back on.
Yeah, it was it's just silly. It's just hard to believe that our country would do that our people were here long before we were colonized.
Yeah.
And it's sad that we couldn't just all get along, that we couldn't just make it work. When you go to the playground, kids just play.
Yeah.
I have 2 young kids, 6 and 4, they just go play with everybody.
Yeah.
They don't worry about, Mom, why is that kid dark brown? And why does that kid have red hair? And why does that kid wear glasses? They don't care. They just play.
Yeah.
They just play and have a great time. And why can't we do that?
And why can't we all play in the sandbox together? I don't understand that.
Exactly. Yeah. Why does it matter if he has a bigger bucket than us? You have to take your gift and use it to better everyone. Not
Absolutely. Yeah.
A small portion of people.
That's what I'm hoping this podcast is going to be able to do for a few people. This is my effort to try and create a ripple and a wave, where people can start learning and understanding about sustainability and understanding how they can contribute to that from their own selves, and then see how that impacts their own community and how that can go beyond. And it can be about using sustainable materials for sure, and environmentally friendly things. That's all a big part of it.
I was listening to a podcast and they were talking about quilting and how does quilting and sustainability work? Because we're using lots of material, right? Thread, fabric.
Yeah.
There's a starch. It's not a starch, but there's a spray that makes things nice and smooth.
Yeah.
And it's actually from Canada. It's called Flatter.
Yeah.
Made well. It's made environmentally friendly.
Yeah, it's from plant-based materials. They're recyclable bottles and they're PBA free, and the contents are natural plant-based materials. And
this is so cool because being a quilter and caring about my mark on the environment.
Yeah.
But one thing that is really cool about this project is people are sending us fabric. So maybe their loved one has passed away or they can't quilt anymore. So instead of throwing all that fabric into a landfill, they're sending some of it to us, and they're finding places to donate it.
Which is amazing. Yeah, and I think that's a great way to use up those stashes or fabrics that you aren't loved ones who passed away, and the people who have these fabrics aren't quilters, don't know what to do with them. And so having a project like yours to contribute to, oh my God, what a great thing to do. It's a legacy for that person who's passed away, right? Their collection is being honored and being passed into a situation that is really a beautiful project. And so there's so much honoring going on in that whole.
Oh, for sure. And then we even received some tops that were handmade by a lady's grandmother. And these are like fabrics from the 50s. You can just tell by the pattern.
Of course. Right? Yeah.
And you're just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And some of them we've actually quilted and we've been able to pass on. But
well, the legacy of that. Yeah, I that's fantastic. It gives me goosebumps thinking about that.
I know. So great. And then even on Friday, we were at the Schumacher Public School and they have 5 Cree language classes at their school.
Okay.
And we were able to honor 45 students with quilts. So they're they're generational survivors.
Yeah.
Or some of them were in foster care or are in foster care. We were able to give them quilts. They were just so excited. And it was warm. It was like 30 degrees. And they're standing outside wrapped in these quilts. And their teachers are telling them, you can take it off now. We can fold it for you. No, I need my quilt. And then as they're running back to the school, some of them had them like capes. And they're just taking off. And they were so happy.
It just must fill your heart right now to know that there is so much love and there's a love transfer happening and you get to witness it. And it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Because I grew up in a very loving home where my parents told me daily that they loved me and that I was valued and appreciated, and I'm able to do that to my own children. But there's kids out there who
don't have that.
Don't get that.
Yeah. I think what you're doing is really quite incredible, for one thing. And I think that it's certainly something that makes me want to participate. And I hope that it makes other people want to participate and help you in your cause of what you're doing. Can you let people know how to reach you?
Sure. So we have a wonderful website. It's www.quiltsforsurvivors.ca. We're on Facebook at quiltsforsurvivors.ca. We also have a Facebook page. And then my email is vanessa@quiltsforsurvivors.ca.
I'll put all of that into the show notes as well.
Sure. And we're on Twitter, and we're on Instagram, and we're on YouTube. We have a new YouTube channel where we're starting to do some quilt tutorials, thanks to my daughter. So that's all to Catherine. She's really kind of helping me get where I need to be.
What an incredible story that was. Very moving, very emotional, very touching, difficult conversations to have. But I'm so glad that Vanessa was willing to talk to me very frankly about all of the things she knows and all of the things she's doing with Quilts for Survivors. If you are wanting to get in touch to help out with Quilts for Survivors, there's all of the places she mentioned that she'll be available, and I'll also have all of those links in the show notes for you. I'm really glad that we can have these kinds of conversations and we can learn about the different types of sustainability, the different things that we can do in our own lives to help for sustainable futures. And I hope that you join me again for the next episode. If you like what you're hearing on Threads of Sustainability, leave me a comment. Let me know about it. Don't forget to follow and like and share wherever you can. I really appreciate it. If you're interested in a community that engages with sustainability in quilting and textiles, you can join the Learning Hub at BridgetO'Flaherty.com. There you will find memberships, online courses, supplies, and resources for sustainability and my textile art. You can also book me to speak with or teach your group. You can find me on social media at The Sustainable Quilter. Don't forget to comment, like, and share, and to follow me on your favorite podcast app so you won't miss an episode. Thanks for joining me, and I'm so excited to share this journey with you. Until next time, happy stitching.